Welcome to the Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and welcome to today's very special video. Today is our 20th wedding anniversary, and while we aren't making a huge, trip or production out of celebrating, which isn't unusual for us, we are always very low key, and it fits our personalities. As I was getting ready this morning, or I'm filming this on Monday morning. You're seeing it on my anniversary, which is Wednesday, or our anniversary. I thought, you know what? Dave is going to be at work. He wasn't initially going to take today off, given that it's, 20 years, but he's super busy. And I told him, go to work. Not a big deal. But what a better way to do a retrospective than 20 books I've read since we got married. Sounds like a great idea, right? I tried to pick a book from every year that was published in that year, and I read it in the year it was released. So much more difficult than it initially sounds, but I did it to myself, so I have no one to blame but me. And I am okay with that. Now, a lot of these are audiobooks, or they were at one point ARCs way back in the day. And it is a definite pattern of how my reading changes through the years. And I tried, for the most part, very hard not to repeat authors. In a couple of cases, I had no choice because there was really nothing else that I read that was published that year. So there are some repeat authors, but that's to be expected given how much I read. And this was a lot of fun, and I came across a lot of books as I was, flipping through the list of, hey, I have that, and I haven't read it yet, and I've had it for how long? I've packed it across the country how many times? I should probably read that. Or it's been sitting in my Audible account forever, and I haven't read it. Why? Or listened to it? So there's all those kind of questions. So this was completely enjoyable. I will throw in pictures of our life through the years. I will tell you right up front that we have always been very bad about photographing one another and each other. They're usually dog pictures or, yard pictures or places we've been. So, you'll still get a glimpse of our life over the last 20 years, but we may not show up in every photo. And we were married long before digital photography was the norm to get your pictures. So all of our wedding pictures are in hard format, and trying to take a picture of a picture and have it turn out well never works. So no wedding pictures. Sorry. That is our engagement photo right above my head, right back there. I did sort of move it so it was a little more obvious. And I will tell you that the last 20 years have been the best 20 years of my life. And God blessed me when he graced me with Dave. And I hope that the last 20 years of his life have been as wonderful and tumultuous and filled with love and tragedy and triumph and uncertainty for him as they have been for me. And I wouldn't change him for all the money in the universe. He is far from perfect. I am far from perfect. But I am a much better person because of my husband. So, okay, without further ado, (2004). Let's jump in the Wayback Machine. First up would be The Hour Game by David Baldacci. This is, I undoubtedly listened to this one on, and Tammy, this laptop is not touchscreen, audiobook. It is a, criminal thriller. I really enjoy Baldacci's writing. I love his tense, intricate, tightly woven plots, and his character work is fantastic. And this is the second book in the Sean King and Michelle Maxwell series, and I remember enjoying this book very much. And that brings us to 2005. Which did not start off great, I will say. But I did read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. This is the first book in the Millennium series. And it too is a crime thriller. I remember actually physically reading this one. If you have not read this series, I do highly recommend reading them physically or electronically versus listening to them because of the English ear, American ear, reading it is easier to keep the characters straight with their somewhat convoluted spellings than it is necessarily to listen to them. At least I found that true to be for me. I found that to be true for me. I thoroughly enjoyed this series. Is it going to be for everybody? No, but if you like Nordic thrillers, if you like a tightly woven contemporary mystery with well thought out characters, then definitely try the Millennium series by Larsson. And The Man Who Continued It for him was equally as good. So I highly recommend this series. All right, 2006. 2006 is one of my is the first in the series of one of my favorite series, and unfortunately the author decided to turn his series into a real life political diatribe, and I can no longer listen to the series, which is unfortunate because the early three-quarters of this series is fantastic. It's the later works that the problems begin. You can probably pinpoint, year-wise when that happens. And that would be the Templar Legacy by Steve Berry. This is the first book in the Cotton Malone series, and it is absolutely a fantastic contemporary thriller that dives through history and just is filled with plot twists and turns, and it was just a fantastic march through time and space, and it kept me guessing right up to the end. So any book that keeps me guessing right up to the end is fantastic, and this one absolutely kept me guessing to the end. I adore the Cotton Malone series, and I am sad that Steve Berry decided to have real life politics intrude and spoil the series for me. So, okay. (2007). That would be The Spellman Files by Lisa Lutz. And this is, I would classify this personally as new adult, young adult mystery. This is a very I don't know what better way to put it. It's a very simplistic read. It wasn't bad, but it also wasn't mature. And that being said, our main character is 28. She should have been a lot more mature than she read to me in this book. I didn't hate this book, and in general, it has a 3.87 rating on Goodreads for whatever that's worth. And I remember reading this one physically. It isn't bad. It just wasn't necessarily, not even necessarily, it definitely was not the best example of a book I read in 2007, but it was probably the only book of the top 200 on the Goodreads list that I use for almost all of these books that was published in 2007 and that I read. So there you go. (2008). This is an author I know appears more than once, and that is because I love listening to his audiobooks. That is The Brass Verdict by Michael Connelly. This is the second book in the Lincoln Lawyer series, and Harry Bosch is a part of this series. If you've seen the Lincoln Lawyer movie or you've read the Lincoln Lawyer book, you know this is a legal thriller. Obviously, since Bosch is in the book, there is somewhat of a mystery. And these are just excellent listens while walking the dog or gardening. You cannot beat Michael Connelly for contemporary crime fiction. The man is a master, and that is why he appears more than once on this list. Okay. Next up would be 2009. That would be The Lost Symbol by Dan Brown. This is the third book in the Robert Langdon series. Again, this was an audible listen for me. I listened to it walking our dogs. And 2009, yeah, we were living in Arizona. This was on par with the Dante Code or the Da Vinci Code, and I forgot the name of the second book. Angels and Demons. He lost nothing when he wrote the third book. It was just as intricate, just as involved in history, just as tightly woven, and excellent plotting. And I thoroughly enjoyed this one. And you cannot go wrong with a Dan Brown book, in my opinion. They're fantastic. Okay, 2010. And I don't keep Goodreads updated. I never have. However, for some reason, this was marked as red for me. I vaguely, and very vaguely remember reading this. That is Fly Away Home by Jennifer Weiner. And hang on. So, I have the vaguest memories of this. This is not my most remembered Jennifer Weiner book, but the most remembered Jennifer Weiner book for me, I read before I even met Dave. So I couldn't include it on this list. In case you're interested, that is Good in Bed. And no, despite the title, it is not a salacious book. It is not, I thoroughly enjoyed that book. This one is chick lit, and it's a contemporary romance within a mature heroine who is my current age. So there you go. Yeah. Okay, 2011. And we are going to go with an unexpected choice. That would be Hounded by Kevin Hearn. This is the first book in the Iron Druid Chronicles series. And this is contemporary urban fantasy. I absolutely adore this series. It is fantastic on audio. It is a romp through the gods of mythology and deities, and it is got a talking dog in it. It has druids and a real life place in Arizona, which I never went to while we were living in Arizona, but it is on my list of things to do next time we go. And it is just a fantastic urban fantasy series, which is not my usual cup of tea. By any stretch of the imagination, I am not an urban fantasy kind of girl. But Iron Druid Chronicles, I absolutely adored. So, okay. Next up is 2012, and that would be The Racketeer by John Grisham. This is another example of Goodreads knows that I read this, and I vaguely recall reading it. I undoubtedly listened to it, although I didn't go back and check my Audible account, but I undoubtedly listened to this. And it is a legal thriller, as you would expect. This is about the lawyer who ends up in prison. Yeah, I sort of remember this one. I will read anything John Grisham writes almost without exception. So I'm not surprised he appears on this list at least once, maybe twice. Okay. Next up is 2013. And that would be The Little Bookshop in Paris by Nina George. This is the first book in the Jean Perdu series. I absolutely loved this book. I loved everything about it. It is a pure delight. It is about books. It is about this man in Paris who calls himself the literary apothecary, and he knows what books people need when they walk into his shop. And it is just a pure delight. If you need a book about France, or you need a book about books, and this is just a beautifully written love letter about books, and it made me fall in love with Nina George as a writer. I have one of her other books sitting on my shelf. I think it's The Little Cafe in Paris. Let's see. Little French Bistro. And no, The Little Village of Bookshop Lovers too. I think I have two sitting on my shelves for her. And honestly, I love everything she has written. Next up would be 2014, and the only cozy to make this list, which is very odd given my love of cozies, but they also don't appear very high on the Goodreads ranking, so I had to really go searching for one, and that is Forget Me Not by Mary Marks. It is the first book in the Quilting Mystery series, and this is a fantastic series. It's got quote unquote mature adults, aka post-retirement. It has crafting. It is a cozy. It's set in California. It's tightly woven. It's always a good time. And there are to date, how many books in this series? 9. The last one came out in 2021. And, if you love to quilt, if you're thinking about becoming a quilter and you just want a good cozy with some, lively, funny, older ladies, this is a good series to go for. And I truly enjoyed this one. I remember sitting down and just flying through it like I usually do with cozies. It is a great palette cleanser between heavier books, or, if you got a bunch of fantasy sitting on your shelf, or heavier thrillers or whatever. This is just cozies are, like always, a great way to cleanse your palette. So I really enjoyed this one when it came up. Okay. 2015. This is the year our life changes. The book for 2015 is Ink and Bone by Rachel Kane. This is the first book in the Great Library series. This is definitely young adult. Fantasy. I've read the entire series. I highly recommend these books. It is focused on the Great Library of Alexandria, and the Great Library controls the dissemination of knowledge to the entire world. And it if you need a young adult dystopian with some romance thrown in and steampunk and historical fiction, pick up this series. As Chrissy likes to say, YA trash. I would honestly say this is a step above YA trash, but it is just a fantastic, read. The entire series for me was just absolutely fantastic. All right, 2016. And this is one of those books I know I read as an ARC way back in the day. I know that it appears there is a review for it on my blog, and that is Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. It is the first book in the Witchland series, and it's young adult fantasy, and I did not like it. It was a very middle of the road, subpar read for me. I have never read any further in the series. I haven't read anything else by the author. I did not enjoy it, but I know I read it the year it came out. So it fits here, and nothing else really fit here. The whole premise is that one of the protagonists in the book can tell truth from lies when people speak. It's a very rare ability, and she becomes very sought after, so she has to hide it. It had potential. It just failed to live up to said potential. Really? Hang on. Okay. 2017. This I know was an audio listen. That is The Late Show by Michael Connelly. It is the first book in the Renee Ballard series. And again, it is a LAPD crime thriller. It is absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed it. I know that if I pick up a Connelly book to listen to, I'm in for a good time. I don't have to worry about the content. If they're swearing, they're swearing. That isn't going to kill a book for me. But Connelly can just write fantastic contemporary crime thrillers. And this is just exactly that. A fantastic contemporary crime thriller. All right, 2018. And this would be the second book in the, what is the name of this series? Star Wars Thrawn series, obviously, given the name is Thrawn Alliances. This I know, again, it's by Timothy Zahn, was an audible read. And this was written before and released. Was it written before? Disney may or may not have owned Star Wars at this point, but it hadn't been infested yet with, nonsense. The Thrawn trilogy is fantastic. It is especially fantastic on Audible, as all Star Wars books are, because they come with the appropriate sound effects. So, there's blaster fire, and you can hear lightsabers firing up and engines engaging in hyperdrives. All of that stuff is present, as is the music. And so it is truly an audio experience with a Star Wars book, which makes it all the more unfortunate that, I can no longer buy them because I can't support them. Okay. Two 2019. 2019. It was a year. That would be the second appearance of Rachel Kane. That is Sword and Pen, which is the fifth book in the Great Library series. And this is, as I recall, the concluding book of the series. It was a fantastic wrap up, and I was actually sad that the series ended. You don't hear me say that very often about young adult novels, and this one I was truly sad it ended. It was very well written. It was thoroughly enjoyable, and who could ask for more? Okay. That brings us to 2020. The year we never talk about. And surprisingly, I did not do a lot of reading in 2020. I know. Odd, huh? But what I did read this was actually a Goodreads win. I remember when it arrived. That would be The Angel of Crows by Catherine Addison. And I love this. I donated this to the library, I think, last year. This is historical fiction, urban fantasy, sort of a retelling of Sherlock Holmes, sort of. And I love the tagline for this book in particular. This is not the story you think it is. These are not the characters you think they are. This is not the book you are expecting. Everything about this was just fantastic. I truly loved this. And if you were looking for a Victober book that isn't Victorian literature or, a Victorian cozy, this is set in alternate universe London in the 1880s. So you can call it Victorian adjacent. I highly recommend this book. I will tell you, in parts, it does get a little graphic and gory. Not in a bad sense, but I loved this book. I really, really did. Okay.
God bless Texas with his own hand, brought down angels from the promised land, gave them a place where they could dance. If you want to see heaven, brother, here's your chance. I've been sent to spread the message.
Moving on. Now we come to the point where I have physical copies. And I don't think any of these are going to be a surprise to anyone. So, hang on. Okay, I have, the rest are all physical copies except 1 year. It threw me for a minute. Okay, so let's talk about the physicals. 2021 would be In Pieces by Rhonda Ortiz. We all know I love this book. We all know I can go on about this book for years, and the second book in the series, which is Adrift. I will link those review videos down below. If you haven't picked it up yet, go pick it up. Do yourself a favor. You can thank me later. It is an absolute masterclass in historical fiction. Don't hesitate.
God bless Texas with his own hand. Brought down angels from the promised land. Gave them a place where they could dance. If you want to see heaven, brother, here's your chance. I've been sent to spread the message.
Okay. 2022. Not going to come as a surprise. Aberration by Kathy McCrum. This is the second book in the Children of the Consortium series. It is quite possibly my favorite cover. I mean, after all, look at that. We all know how much I adore this entire series. It is complete. I will tell you once again, I will link the videos down below for them. If you pick up the first book, which is Recorder, you're going to want to make sure you have easy access to books 2 and 3, because trust me when I tell you, you will need to know. Yeah, you will need to know.
God bless Texas with his own hand. Brought down angels from the promised land. Gave them a place where they could dance. If you want to see heaven, brother, here's your chance. I've been sent to spread the message.
Okay, so for 2023, I'm going to, there's many I could have chosen, but by far the one I think a lot of people don't give enough credit to, and surprisingly enough, it's labeled as young adult too, which makes sense. That would be Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is the first book in the Letter of Enchantment duology. It is a fantastic fantasy in which letters and a magical typewriter take center stage in a romance, and I absolutely love this duology. I absolutely love this duology. It surprised me how much I loved it. It really did. It really surprised me how much I loved it. Okay, so that leaves this year.
I've seen a lot of places. I've been around the world. I've seen some pretty faces. Been with some beautiful girls. After all I've witnessed, one thing still amazes me.
2024. It's hard to believe that we have been married for 20 years. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. And I thank God every day that I get to wake up and be so blessed, despite, the work that is marriage and the ups and downs and, life as it happens. I wouldn't change a thing. Okay, well, maybe I would change the miscarriages to not be miscarriages, but I wouldn't change Dave. I wouldn't change our life together. I wouldn't do it. So what book am I going to recommend for our 20th anniversary together? There are many choices I could have chosen. But I'm going to recommend Love in the Eternal City by Rebecca W. Martin. This is a very rare example of a book I initially read and purchased on my Kindle. and then went and purchased the physical copy to put on my shelf. I absolutely love this book. It is Catholic fiction. If you haven't read it, if you want a good romance that has much more in it than a romance, do yourself a favor. Go read this book. So, there is a very brief what have I read in the last 20 years of married life. It is a very small glimpse into what I've read in the last 20 years. Or more accurately, what books I have read that have been published in the last 20 years. It was, fun, quick research video to do. It will be interesting to see if 20 years from now, what I will have read. Maybe I should make a point of journaling that going forward so it's a little easier. I have to make a note to self to do that. Of course, 20 years from now, we will be in our 70s. Isn't that amazing? 20 years from now, we will be in our 70s. And my house is just got all kinds of interesting bugs on the outside of it today, and I don't understand why. Not that any of you need to know that. Of course, the bush over there is filled with hummingbirds at the moment too, which you can't see. Yeah. Fall in Texas. So, leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.